I need a date to my ex's wedding.
I'll go as your husband.
Stop scrolling. You've felt that pit in your stomach, haven't you? That moment when the invitation arrives and you realize the person who broke you is marrying the person he told you not to worry about. Sienna held the heavy cream envelope in her shaking hands. Her ex, Liam, wasn't just getting married. He was marrying her stepsister, Jessica. The note inside was a final twist of the knife. Come, if you dare. Don't bring a cheap date. Sienna was humiliated, alone, and desperate. She needed a miracle. She found one in a dark bar, a stranger with eyes like jagged ice. She asked for a date. He gave her a crown. The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean. It just made everything heavier. Sienna Brooks stood by the mailbox at the end of her driveway, the water soaking through her thin cardigan. But she couldn't feel the cold. All she could feel was the heat radiating from the thick, textured envelope in her hand. It was embossed with gold leaf. It smelled like expensive vanilla and cruelty. Mr. Liam Harper and Miss Jessica Brooks, her ex-boyfriend, and her stepsister. Sienna walked back up the driveway to her small, rented guest house. It was a far cry from the sprawling estate her father owned, just 10 miles away, the estate where Jessica now lived, and where Liam had apparently moved in 3 months ago. The same Liam who had sworn to Sienna, right before he dumped her on her 23rd birthday, that he needed space to find himself. Apparently, he found himself in her sister's bed. She kicked off her wet boots and collapsed onto her worn-out sofa, ripping the envelope open. A small, handwritten note fell out. It wasn't a standard RSVP card. It was a note in Jessica's looping, perfect handwriting. Sienna, Daddy thinks it would be healing if you came. Liam agrees. We want you to see how happy we are so you can finally move on. Please come, but try to look presentable. And if you bring a +1, make sure he isn't one of those mechanics you hang out with. Don't embarrass us. Sienna crumbled the note, her knuckles turning white. It wasn't enough that they had betrayed her. They wanted an audience. They wanted to parade their fated mate bond in front of her, to prove that her human heritage made her inferior. In their pack, the Silver Moon, wolves were royalty and humans, or those with dormant wolves like her, were second-class citizens. I can't go, she whispered to the empty room. I can't walk in there alone. If she showed up alone, the whispers would start. Look at poor Sienna, the reject, the wolfless failure. Jessica would smirk from the altar. Liam would give her that pitying look that made her want to scream. She needed a shield. She needed a distraction. She needed a date who looked so good that no one would even look at the groom. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from her best friend, Maddie. I heard about the invite. Drinks. Now. The Rusty Anchor. 30 minutes later, Sienna was sitting in a booth at the Rusty Anchor, a dive bar on the edge of the territory. It was neutral ground, where rogues, humans, and pack wolves mingled without too much bloodshed. You are not going, Maddie said, slamming a beer down on the sticky table. Maddie was a badger shifter, tough as nails and twice as loud. I have to, Sienna said, staring into her glass. If I don't, my father will cut me off completely. He said, family unity is paramount for his council seat. He needs the perfect family photo. So he wants you to smile while your ex marries your sister. That's sick, see. I know. Sienna took a long sip. I need a date, Maddie. I need someone tall, devastatingly handsome, and willing to pretend he worships the ground I walk on for 5 hours next Saturday. Maddie snorted. You got 20 grand? Because that's what an escort like that costs. I have $300 and a Honda Civic that needs a new transmission. The door to the bar opened, letting in a gust of wind and the smell of ozone and rain. The chatter in the bar died down instantly. Sienna looked up, feeling the shift in the air. The atmosphere grew heavy, charged with a static electricity that made the hair on her arm stand up. A man walked in. He was massive. That was the first thing she noticed. He had to be 6'4", with shoulders that strained the fabric of his expensive charcoal coat. He shook the rain off his dark hair, his movements fluid and predatory. When he turned, the dim light caught his face, sharp jawline, a shadow of stubble, and eyes that were a startling, piercing grey. He didn't look like he belonged in the Rusty Anchor. He looked like he owned the city, and perhaps the ground beneath it. He walked to the bar, and the crowd parted for him like the Red Sea. Even the bartender, a grizzled old bear shifter named Hank, stood up straighter. "Who is that?" Sienna whispered. Maddie's eyes went wide. "I don't know, but he smells like power, pure power. Don't look at him, see? That's trouble." But Sienna couldn't look away. He was perfect. He was exactly what Jessica would hate. He was exactly what Liam would be intimidated by. The man ordered a whiskey, neat. He downed it in one go, slammed the glass down, and signaled for another. He looked angry. No, not angry, lethal. He looked like he had just buried a body or was planning to. "I'm going to ask him," Sienna said, the alcohol giving her a reckless courage she didn't possess 10 minutes ago. "Sienna, no," Maddie hissed. "He looks like he eats people for breakfast." "Perfect," Sienna said, standing up. "My family is full of sharks. I need a killer whale." She smoothed down her jeans, checked her reflection in the dirty window. Her dark hair was a frizzy mess, but her hazel eyes were bright with desperation, and walked toward the bar. Every step felt harder than the last, the pressure in the air intensifying the closer she got to him. It was an alpha aura, but stronger than any she had ever felt. Stronger than her father's. Stronger than the alpha of the Silver Moon pack. She stopped right next to him. He didn't acknowledge her. He just stared at the amber liquid in his glass. "Excuse me," she said. Her voice shook, just a little. The man turned his head slowly. Those grey eyes locked onto hers, and for a second, Sienna forgot how to breathe. It felt like he was scanning her soul, assessing her value, and finding it wanting. "What?" His voice was a low rumble, like thunder trapped in a canyon. "You look like you're having a bad night," Sienna said, her heart hammering against her ribs. He raised a dark eyebrow. "And you think you're the solution?" "No," she said quickly. "I think I'm a distraction. I have a proposition." He turned his body fully toward her now, leaning back against the bar. A faint, mocking smirk played on his lips. "A proposition. Do you know who I am, little human?" "No," she lied. She could tell he was a wolf, but she didn't care about his rank. "And I don't care. I just need a favor." "I don't do favors. I'll pay you," she blurted out. He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "You can't afford me. I don't need you for a night," she said, her cheeks burning. "I just need a date. To a wedding. My ex-boyfriend is marrying my stepsister. Next Saturday. I need someone to walk in there with me. Hold my hand. Look at me like I'm the only woman in the world. And make them regret everything." The man stared at her. The silence stretched for an agonizing 10 seconds. He looked at her cheap sneakers, her worn jeans, her nervous hands. Then he looked back at her face. "Your ex is marrying your sister?" he asked, his tone unreadable. "Step-sister. And yes, it's pathetic. I know. But I can't go alone." The man took another sip of his whiskey. He seemed to be calculating something. "What's the pack?" "Silver Moon," she said. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Alpha Richard Brooks?" "That's my father," she admitted. "Jessica is his favorite. I'm just the mistake." The man set his glass down. He turned to face her completely, his towering height making her feel tiny. He took a step closer, invading her personal space, smelling of rain, expensive scotch, and deep, dark forest. "I won't be your date," he said softly. Sienna's heart sank. "Okay, I understand. Sorry to bother. I'll go as your husband." Sienna blinked. The noise of the bar seemed to drop away, leaving only the sound of her own blood rushing in her ears. "Excuse me," she squeaked. "Did you say husband?" The stranger's smirk deepened, revealing a dangerous glint in his eyes. "A date is easily dismissed, Sienna. A boyfriend can be broken up with. But a husband? A husband is permanent. A husband commands respect. If you want to burn their world down, you don't walk in with a fling. You walk in with a ring." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a plain, heavy, platinum band. He spun it on the bar top. It made a rhythmic thrum-thrum-thrum sound before settling. "Why?" Sienna asked, suspicion finally cutting through her desperation. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." "Let's just say I have business with the Silver Moon pack," the man said smoothly, "and walking in as the son-in-law of Alpha Brooks gives me access. Access I wouldn't have otherwise. So, I'm a Trojan horse," Sienna realized. "And I am your shield," he countered. "It's a transaction. You get your revenge. I get my entry. Do we have a deal?" Sienna looked at the ring. Then she looked at his face. He was terrifyingly handsome. If she walked into Jessica's wedding with this man on her arm, introduced as her husband, it wouldn't just cause a scene. It would cause a nuclear explosion. Liam would lose his mind. Jessica would choke on her wedding cake. "What's your name?" she asked. "Gabriel," he said. Gabriel Sterling. The name sounded familiar, heavy with history, but her brain was too scrambled to place it. "Okay, Gabriel. But we have to get our stories straight. How did we meet? When did we get married?" "Leave the details to me," Gabriel said, picking up the ring. He took her left hand. His skin was hot against hers, his grip firm but surprisingly gentle. He slid the ring onto her finger. It was too big, but as soon as it passed her knuckle, it seemed to warm up and tighten, fitting perfectly. Magic. Powerful magic. "Meet me here tomorrow at noon," Gabriel commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. "We have a lot of work to do before Saturday. You can't walk into a war zone wearing denim." The next few days were a blur that Sienna could barely comprehend. Gabriel didn't just play the part. He orchestrated a transformation. He didn't take her to the local mall. A black town car picked her up, driven by a silent, scarred man named Kyle, and drove her 3 hours to the city center of Chicago, to a high-rise penthouse that touched the clouds. When she walked in, a team of stylists was waiting. "Burn the cardigan," Gabriel said from the balcony, not even turning around. He was on the phone, speaking a language Sienna didn't recognize, something guttural and ancient. "Mr. Sterling, please." A stylist named Pierre fluttered around Sienna. "She has good bone structure. We just need to polish." They scrubbed her, waxed her, and dressed her in silk and velvet. When they were done, Sienna stared at the mirror in shock. The frizzy hair was now a cascade of glossy chestnut waves. The tired eyes were framed by smoky makeup that made them look fierce. She wore a dress of emerald green satin that clung to every curve, with a slit that went dangerously high up her thigh. "Better," Gabriel said, walking into the room. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin. He stood behind her, his dark eyes meeting hers in the reflection. "Now, the story." He handed her a file. "Read it. Memorize it." Sienna opened the folder. It was a marriage certificate, dated 6 months ago. "Las Vegas. We met in Vegas?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Classy. We met at a high-stakes poker table," Gabriel corrected. "You were the lucky charm. We got drunk, we got married, and we realized we were soulmates in the morning. We've been traveling Europe since then. That's why you haven't been home." "My father will check the records," Sienna warned. "He has contacts in the human government." "Let him check," Gabriel said with a dark chuckle. "The records exist. I had them planted this morning." Sienna looked at him, a shiver of fear mixing with the excitement. "Who are you really? You have stylists, drivers, the power to forge government documents in a morning." Gabriel turned her around to face him. He reached out and tucked a stray curl behind her ear, his touch sending a jolt of electricity down her spine. "I told you, I'm your husband. For now, that is all you need to know. Just remember one thing, Sienna." "What?" "When we walk into that wedding, you do not bow. You do not flinch. You are Mrs. Sterling now, and Sterlings do not beg." Saturday, the wedding. The Silver Moon estate was decked out in white roses and satin ribbons. Expensive cars lined the driveway, Mercedes, Bentleys, a few pack SUVs. It was a display of wealth and power, exactly what Jessica had always wanted. Sienna's hands were shaking as the black Rolls-Royce pulled up to the valet stand. "Breathe." Gabriel's voice came from beside her. He sounded bored, as if he were about to attend a business meeting rather than a family implosion. "They're all there," Sienna whispered, looking out the tinted window. She saw her father, Alpha Richard, laughing with the council members. She saw Liam, standing near the entrance, looking nervous in his tux. "Good," Gabriel said. "Let's give them a show." The driver opened the door. Gabriel stepped out first. The murmur of the crowd didn't stop immediately, but as he stood to his full height and buttoned his jacket, heads started to turn. Then he reached a hand into the car. Sienna took a deep breath, grabbed his hand, and stepped out. The silence that fell over the lawn was instantaneous and absolute. Sienna stood tall, the emerald dress catching the sunlight, the diamond on her finger, a new addition Gabriel had given her, in the car, flashing like a beacon. She wasn't the mousy girl in the cardigan anymore. She looked like a queen. Gabriel tucked her hand into the crook of his arm. He leaned down and whispered in her ear, loud enough for the wolves with enhanced hearing to catch. "You look breathtaking, my love." He kissed her cheek, lingering for a moment. Sienna blushed, and for a second, it wasn't acting. They began to walk toward the entrance. The sea of guests parted. Sienna saw Maddie in the crowd, her jaw practically hitting the grass. Then she saw Liam. Liam dropped the champagne flute he was holding. It shattered on the pavement, the sound echoing like a gunshot. His eyes were wide, fixed on Sienna, and then they drifted to Gabriel. Color drained from Liam's face. He didn't just look shocked, he looked terrified. "Sienna?" Liam choked out, stepping forward. What is this?" Sienna opened her mouth to speak, but Gabriel tightened his grip on her arm, a protective, possessive gesture. "I believe congratulations are in order for you, mate," Gabriel said, his voice projecting across the silent lawn, "though I must question your taste." "Letting a woman like this go?" Gabriel chuckled darkly, pulling Sienna closer. "Your loss was very much my gain." "Who are you?" Alpha, Richard Brooks boomed, marching down the stairs, his face red with anger. "And what are you doing with my daughter?" Gabriel smiled. It was the smile of a wolf who had cornered a rabbit. "I'm her husband," Gabriel said calmly, "and I'm here to give the bride away, or whatever it is you do in this backwater pack." The gasps were audible, but Sienna noticed something else. Her father, a proud and arrogant alpha, wasn't looking at her. He was staring at Gabriel, and for the first time in her life, Sienna saw her father tremble. "Sterling," Richard whispered, his voice shaking. You are a Sterling." "Gabriel Sterling," he confirmed. "And we have a wedding to attend. Shall we?" He didn't wait for an answer. He walked Sienna right past her stunned father, past her horrified ex-boyfriend, and toward the front row seats reserved for family. As they sat down, Sienna leaned toward him. "My father knows your name. Why?" Gabriel adjusted his cufflinks, his eyes fixed on the altar where Jessica was about to appear. "Because, my dear wife," he whispered, "I own the bank that holds the mortgage on this entire estate. And as of this morning, I'm thinking of foreclosing." The organ music swelled, a pompous, vibrating sound that seemed to shake the very benches of the outdoor chapel. It was a tune meant to inspire awe, but to Sienna, it sounded like a funeral dirge for her past life. She sat in the front row, her spine stiff against the wooden chair. To her right sat her aunt, a woman who had never had a kind word for Sienna, now staring open-mouthed at the massive diamond ring on Sienna's finger. To her left sat Gabriel. He was a furnace of heat and calm, while everyone else fidgeted, adjusting ties, whispering behind fans, casting nervous glances at the dark clouds gathering overhead. Gabriel was perfectly still. He sat with his legs crossed at the ankle, one arm draped casually over the back of Sienna's chair, his fingers idly playing with a loose strand of her hair. It was a possessive gesture, a territorial claim, and every wolf in the vicinity could smell it. "Relax," Gabriel murmured, his lips brushing the shell of her ear. "You're trembling." "I'm terrified," Sienna whispered back, keeping her eyes fixed on the flower arch where Liam stood waiting. "My father looks like he's about to have a stroke, and Liam looks like he's about to vomit." "Good," Gabriel said, a cruel amusement in his voice. "Let them sweat. It's good for the pores." The music shifted. The guests stood. Jessica appeared at the top of the aisle. Sienna had to admit, her stepsister looked beautiful, but it was a sharp, manufactured beauty. Her dress was a meringue of white lace and crystals, so wide she could barely fit down the aisle. She wore a tiara that looked suspiciously like the one their grandmother had left to Sienna in her will, the one Jessica had claimed was lost years ago. Sienna's hands balled into fists in her lap. Gabriel's large hand immediately covered hers, prying her fingers open and interlacing them with his own. He squeezed, a silent signal of support. "I see it too," the squeeze seemed to say. "We will take it back." As Jessica walked down the aisle, her eyes scanned the crowd, hungry for adoration. She smiled at the council members, winked at her bridesmaids. Then, her gaze landed on the front row. Her smile faltered. She saw Sienna, not the crying, broken mess she had expected, but a stunning woman in emerald silk, looking like royalty, and next to her, a man who made every other male in the vicinity look like a boy. Jessica missed a step. She actually stumbled, her heel catching in the grass. A ripple of gasps went through the crowd. Liam stepped forward as if to catch her, but she recovered, her face flushing a deep, angry red. She glared at Sienna with pure venom before turning her eyes back to the altar. "She hates you right now," Gabriel whispered, sounding delighted. "She always has," Sienna replied. The ceremony was agonizing. The officiant, a pack elder named Cornelius, droned on about the sanctity of the mate bond, about how the moon goddess blessed unions of power. "Do you take this woman?" Cornelius asked. Liam looked at Jessica. Then, involuntarily, his eyes flicked to Sienna. He looked at Gabriel's hand resting on her knee. A flash of something raw jealousy? Regret? Crossed Liam's face. "Liam," Jessica hissed, her voice low but sharp enough to be picked up by the microphone. Liam blinked, snapping back to reality. "I do," he said, his voice cracking. "And do you?" "Jessica." "I do," she said loudly, practically shouting it. "I definitely do. Then, by the power vested in me by the Silver Moon Pack Council, I pronounce you mated. You may kiss the bride." Liam leaned in. It was a stiff, awkward kiss. There was no spark, no magical flare of energy that usually accompanied a fated mate bond sealing. The sky didn't clear. The birds didn't sing. It was just two people smashing their faces together. Gabrielle chuckled softly. "Pathetic." "What?" Sienna whispered. "They aren't fated," Gabriel said, his voice low and dangerous. "He's lying. She's lying. There is no mate bond there. He's marrying her for the position, and she's marrying him because he was yours." Sienna felt a cold chill. "How can you tell?" "Because if she were truly his mate," Gabriel said, turning his grey eyes to her, "he wouldn't be able to smell your scent over hers, and he has been inhaling your perfume since you stepped out of the car." As the couple walked back down the aisle, the recessional music playing, the guests clapped politely. Liam and Jessica passed the front row. Gabriel didn't clap. He simply stared at Liam. Liam stopped. He couldn't help it. The dominance rolling off Gabriel was like a physical wall. "Congratulations," Gabriel said. He didn't stand. He didn't smile. "May your marriage be as honest as your vows." The insult was subtle, but it landed like a slap. Jessica bristled, her claws lengthening slightly at her fingertips, a breach of etiquette at a wedding. "Who do you think you are?" Jessica snapped, forgetting her blushing bride persona. "Ruining my moment?" "I'm family," Gabriel drawled. "I'm your brother-in-law. Shouldn't you be welcoming me?" "Sienna," Jessica sneered, turning her wrath on her sister. "I told you not to bring trash." Before Sienna could respond, Gabriel moved. He didn't stand up. He just shifted his energy. The air around them dropped 10 degrees. The shadows seemed to stretch toward him. "Careful, little girl." Gabriel's voice was a low growl that vibrated in everyone's chest. "Call my wife trash again, and I'll turn this wedding into a funeral." Alpha Richard, Sienna's father, rushed over, sweating profusely. He grabbed Jessica's arm. "Jessica, enough. Move along to the reception tent. Now." He looked at Gabriel with terror in his eyes. "Mr. Sterling, please, forgive her. Nerves, high spirits." Gabriel stared at the Alpha for a long, uncomfortable moment. "Educate your daughter, Richard." "Before I do." Richard nodded frantically and dragged the fuming bride away. Sienna let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She looked at Gabriel. He was calm again, adjusting his cuffs. "You threatened to kill the bride," Sienna said, eyes wide. "I threatened to educate her," Gabriel corrected, standing up and offering her his hand. "Though, in my experience, the two often look remarkably similar. Come, wife. I believe there is an open bar. I'm going to need it." The reception was held in a massive white tent on the south lawn. Crystal chandeliers hung from the canvas ceiling, and a 10-piece band played soft jazz. It was elegant, expensive, and suffocating. Sienna felt like an intruder in her own life. Old friends, people she had known since childhood, avoided her gaze or whispered behind their hands as she passed. But they looked at Gabriel with a mixture of lust and fear. They found their table, table 19, placed near the back, by the kitchen entrance. Another petty slight by Jessica. But Gabriel didn't sit. He grabbed a waiter by the arm. "Move us," he said. "Sir?" the waiter squeaked. "Head table," Gabriel said. "There are 2 empty seats next to the Alpha. But those are for the Alpha's parents." "They're dead," Gabriel said flatly. "They won't mind. Move the cards." 5 minutes later, Sienna found herself sitting at the head table, directly across from a seething Jessica and a pale Liam. Her father sat to her right, drinking whiskey as if it were water. The dinner was tense. Every time silverware clinked against a plate, it sounded like a sword being drawn. Then came the speeches. The best man, a frat boy wolf named Chad, told a series of inappropriate jokes about Liam's college days. The maid of honor, Jessica's clone, cried about how perfect Jessica was. Then, the microphone was left open. "Does anyone else wish to say a few words?" the DJ asked. Gabriel stood up. Sienna grabbed his thigh under the table. "Gabriel, don't." He ignored her. He took the microphone. The room went dead silent. "I won't take much of your time," Gabriel said, his voice smooth, commanding the room without shouting. "I just wanted to toast the happy couple." He raised his glass. "To Liam, for showing us that loyalty is a flexible concept, and to Jessica, for proving that you can, indeed, get everything you want, if you're willing to take what belongs to someone else." The silence was deafening. Someone dropped a fork. "And to my beautiful wife, Sienna," Gabriel continued, turning his gaze to her. His eyes softened, and for a moment, the act dropped, or perhaps the act was just that good. "Thank you for saving me from a life of boredom. You are the only thing in this room worth more than the silver in the cutlery." He drank. He sat down. Jessica looked like she was going to explode. Liam looked like he wanted to die. Alpha Richard clapped loudly, desperate to break the tension, and the rest of the room followed suit nervously. "First dance," the DJ yelled, panicking. "Let's get the bride and groom out here." Liam and Jessica took the floor. They swayed to a generic love song, whispering furiously to each other. They looked miserable. "May I?" Gabriel stood and extended a hand to Sienna. "We shouldn't," Sienna said. "It's their moment." "We're stealing it," Gabriel said. He pulled her onto the floor. As soon as they stepped onto the parquet, the spotlight seemed to find them. Gabriel pulled her close, much closer than polite society dictated. His hand splayed across her lower back, burning through the silk. They moved together perfectly. Sienna had never been a good dancer, but with Gabriel, she didn't have to think. He guided her, his body anticipating her movements before she even made them. "You're causing a scene," she whispered into his chest. "I'm creating a legend," he murmured. "Tomorrow, no one will talk about the wedding. They will talk about us." "Why are you doing this?" she asked, looking up into his grey eyes. "It's more than just the deal. You hate them." Gabriel's expression tightened. "I hate bullies, Sienna. And I hate thieves. They stole your dignity. I'm just charging them interest." The song ended. As the applause scattered through the room, Gabriel released her, but kept her hand in his. "I need a drink," Sienna said, her head spinning. "A real one." "I'll get it," Gabriel said. "Stay here. Don't wander." He walked toward the bar. Sienna took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. She turned to find a restroom to splash water on her face, but a hand grabbed her wrist. She spun around. It was Liam. He dragged her into the shadows behind a large floral arrangement. "Let go of me," Sienna hissed, yanking her arm back. "Sienna, please," Liam begged. His eyes were bloodshot. He smelled of fear and cheap champagne. "We need to talk. Who is he?" "My husband," she said, lifting her chin. "Bullshit," Liam spat. "You've been gone for 6 months, but I know you. You wouldn't marry a guy like that. He's dangerous." "Sienna, do you know what he feels like? His aura? It's not normal. He's not just an alpha. He's something else. He treats me better than you ever did," Sienna said cold. "I did what I had to do," Liam whispered urgently. "Your father, he made me do it. Sienna, he said if I didn't mate with Jessica, he'd exile my family. He'd ruin my father's business. I did it to save them." Sienna stared at him. "You're a coward, Liam. You could have told me. We could have left. But you chose the easy way out." "I still love you," Liam said, reaching for her face. "Tell me you don't feel it. Tell me this marriage is fake. Don't touch her." The voice didn't come from behind them. It seemed to come from everywhere, wrapping around them like a suffocating blanket. Gabriel emerged from the crowd. He wasn't holding drinks. He was holding his rage in check by a literal thread. His eyes were glowing, not the usual wolf yellow, but a swirling, stormy violet. Liam stumbled back, terrified. I was just... "You were just leaving," Gabriel said. He stepped between them, shielding Sienna. He leaned down into Liam's face. "Touch her again, and I will tear your arm off and beat you to death with it. Do you understand?" Liam nodded rapidly, scrambling backward before turning and running back toward the safety of the head table. Gabriel turned to Sienna. The violet faded from his eyes, returning to grey, but the intensity remained. He checked her wrist where Liam had grabbed her. A faint red mark was forming. Gabriel traced the mark with his thumb, his jaw working. "I should have killed him." "Gabriel," Sienna whispered, her voice trembling. Liam said something. He said, "Your aura isn't normal." He said, "You're not just an alpha." She looked at him, really looked at him. The way the other wolves cowered, the way her father, a powerful alpha, was terrified of him. The way he commanded the room with a tilt of his head. "Who are you?" she asked again. "And don't tell me you're a banker." Gabriel hid. He looked around the crowded tent, at the petty politics and the small-minded wolves. "I told you my name is Gabriel Sterling," he said quietly. "But in the north, where the winters don't end and the packs are armies, they don't call me Mr. Sterling. What do they call you?" He looked down at her, a sad, weary smile on his lips. "They call me the Wolf King." Sienna's breath hitched. The Wolf King, the ruler of all packs, the mythical alpha of alphas who enforced the laws of their kind. A figure most people thought was just a bedtime story to scare Pup, and she had just hired him to be her fake date for $300. "Oh my God," she whispered. "We have a problem, Sienna," Gabriel said, his tone shifting to business. "Liam is weak, but he's not stupid. He sensed it, and if he sensed it, your father will too. Soon, they won't be looking at you as a reject. They'll be looking at you as the queen." "I didn't sign up for this," she panicked. "I just wanted to make my ex jealous." "The contract is signed," Gabriel said, his voice hard but his eyes pleading. "And tonight, the game changed. Look." He pointed toward the entrance of the tent. 3 men had just walked in. They were dressed in black tactical gear, not tuxedos. They had scars on their faces and silver weapons strapped to their thighs. They weren't guests, they were hunters. "Rogues?" Sienna asked. "Assassins," Gabriel corrected. "They're here for me. It seems your father's debt isn't just to the bank. He's been borrowing money from the rogue syndicate, and he just sold me out to pay his tab." Gabriel buttoned his jacket. He cracked his neck. "Stay behind me, wife," he said, a feral grin spreading across his face. "The wedding is over. The war has begun." The first shot wasn't a bullet. It was a crossbow bolt. It whistled through the air, slicing through the tension and embedding itself in the wooden post inches from Gabriel's head. Chaos erupted. The screaming started instantly. Guests dove under tables, overturning plates of expensive salmon and crystal glasses. The 3 assassins in tactical gear moved with terrifying speed, drawing serrated blades that gleamed with a coating of liquid wolfsbane. "Get down!" Gabriel roared, shoving Sienna behind the heavy oak bar. "Gabriel!" she screamed as the lead assassin lunged at him. Sienna watched, paralyzed, as her husband met the charge. Gabriel didn't shift into his wolf form, he didn't have time. Instead, he moved with a speed that blurred the human eye. He caught the assassin's wrist, the blade inches from his throat. With a sickening crack, Gabriel twisted. The assassin howled, dropping the knife. Gabriel spun, delivering a kick to the man's chest that sent him flying backward into the wedding cake, collapsing the 5-tier confection in a spray of fondant and frosting. "Kill him! Kill the monster!" Alpha Richard screamed from the other side of the tent. Sienna's blood ran cold. Her father wasn't hiding. He was pointing at Gabriel. He was commanding his pack warriors not to help Gabriel, but to aid the assassins. "Father, no!" Sienna cried out, scrambling up from behind the bar. "He's the king. You're committing treason. He's a threat to my position," Richard yelled back, his face purple with madness and drink. "The syndicate promised me power if I handed him over. I won't let some northern upstart take what is mine." 2 Silver Moon warriors, men Sienna had known her whole life, hesitated. But the Alpha command was absolute. They shifted, their clothes shredding as they transformed into large grey wolves and charged at Gabriel. Gabriel was surrounded. 3 assassins and 2 pack wolves. He laughed. It was a sound that vibrated in the floorboards, deep and primal. "So be it," Gabriel growled. "I judge this pack. Unworthy." A shockwave of power exploded from him. It knocked the tables over. It blew the tent flaps open. Gabriel's eyes glowed that terrifying violet again. He didn't full shift, but his canines lengthened, and his claws tore through his tuxedo gloves. He was a whirlwind of violence. He dodged a bite from a wolf, grabbing the beast by the scruff and throwing it into an assassin. He moved like water and struck like iron, but there were too many of them. One of the assassins, a woman with a scar across her eye, noticed Sienna. She realized that the king was protecting the girl, staying close to the bar to shield her. The assassin grinned and pulled a silver pistol. She aimed not at Gabriel, but at Sienna. "Sienna, move," Maddie's voice rang out. Maddie, Sienna's badger shifter friend, threw a heavy glass pitcher at the assassin. It missed, but it ruined the aim. The bullet grazed Sienna's arm, tearing through the emerald silk and leaving a line of fire across her skin. Sienna cried out, clutching her arm. The sound of her pain broke Gabriel. He stopped fighting defensively. He let out a roar that shattered the remaining windows of the estate house 50 yards away. The violet aura around him solidified into physical force. He grabbed the assassin who had shot Sienna by the throat. He lifted her off the ground, as if she weighed nothing. "You touched my queen," he snarled. He snapped her neck and tossed her aside. The sight was so brutal that the other attackers paused. "Run," Gabriel commanded Sienna, not looking back. "The car. Now." "I'm not leaving you," she yelled, grabbing a steak knife from a fallen table. "Sienna, go." "No." She ran to him, just as another assassin lunged. Sienna jammed the steak knife into the attacker's thigh. It wasn't a fatal blow, but it was enough to make him stumble. Gabriel grabbed Sienna's waist, pulling her flush against him. "You foolish, brave woman," he breathed. He swept her up into his arms. He kicked the back exit of the tent open, sprinting into the rainy night. "They'll follow us," Sienna shouted over the wind. Her arm was bleeding, staining Gabriel's shirt. "Let them come," Gabriel said. They reached the Rolls-Royce. Cale, the driver, was already there, the engine running. He had a semi-automatic rifle resting on the hood. "Boss," Cale nodded, cool as ice. "Trouble?" "War," Gabriel said, depositing Sienna in the back seat. "Get us to the safe house, the mountain route." Cale jumped in. Gabriel slid in next to Sienna. The car peeled out of the driveway, gravel spraying like bullets. As they sped away, Sienna looked back through the rear window. She saw her father standing in the rain, screaming at his failed assassins. She saw Liam helping a sobbing Jessica out of the mud. The wedding was ruined. Her family was gone. She turned to Gabriel. He was ripping the sleeve of his expensive shirt. "Let me see your arm," he demanded, his voice tight with controlled panic. "It's just a scratch," Sienna said, though it burned like acid. "It's silver," Gabriel said grimly. "It burns like hellfire to us." He poured whiskey from the car's minibar onto a napkin and pressed it to the wound. Sienna hissed in pain. "Why?" Sienna asked, tears finally spilling over. "Why did you stay? You could have escaped the moment the fighting started. You stayed to protect me." Gabriel finished wrapping her arm. He looked at her, his violet eyes fading back to a stormy grey. He reached up and cupped her face, wiping a tear away with his thumb. "I told you, Sienna. A husband protects his wife." "We aren't married," she cried. "It's a lie. It's just a game to get back at my ex." Gabriel went quiet. The car sped up the winding mountain roads, the city lights fading behind them. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. "Is it?" Gabriel asked softly. "Is it really just a game to you, Sienna?" Sienna opened her mouth to say yes, but the word died in her throat. Her heart was hammering against her ribs, not from fear anymore, but from something else, something magnetic, pulling her toward the dangerous man sitting beside her. "I don't know who you are anymore," she whispered. "Then tonight," Gabriel said, leaning back as the car disappeared into the dense forest, "I will tell you everything." The safe house wasn't a house. It was a fortress, disguised as a log cabin. Nestled high in the Cascades, it was surrounded by ancient pines and protected by wards that hummed in the air. Kyle stayed outside to keep watch. Gabriel led Sienna inside. The interior was warm, filled with heavy leather furniture and a roaring fire that had roared to life automatically upon their entry. It smelled of cedar and safety. Sienna shivered. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving her cold and shaking. The reality of what had happened, the betrayal, the violence, the revelation that her father was a traitor, was hitting her all at once. Gabriel disappeared into the bathroom and returned with a first aid kit and a warm, damp cloth. "Sit," he instructed gently, pointing to the rug before the fire. She sat. He knelt before her, unlacing her ruined high heels. He began to clean the mud and blood from her legs. His touch was reverent, completely at odds with the violence he had displayed an hour ago. "You're the Wolf King," Sienna said, watching his hands. "The Alpha of Alphas. You govern the council. You decide the laws." "I do," Gabriel said, focusing on a scratch on her ankle. "So why?" she asked. "Why were you in a dive bar in Seattle alone? Why did you agree to be my date? Why did you let me pay you $300? Gabriel stopped. He dropped the cloth into the basin of water. He looked up at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes took her breath away. "I wasn't in that bar by accident, Sienna. I was looking for you." Sienna blinked. "Me? You didn't even know me." "I've known of you for 5 years, Gabriel said. He shifted, sitting cross-legged so he was eye-level with her. "5 years ago, I visited the Silver Moon Pack for a generic inspection. I walked past the training grounds. I saw a girl, 18 years old, fighting a warrior twice her size. She lost, but she got back up, 4 times. She had no wolf, no speed, no healing, but she had more heart than any alpha I've ever met." Sienna gasped. "I remember that. I didn't know the king was watching. I couldn't approach you," Gabriel confessed. "You were young. I had enemies. And I wasn't sure. The pull was there, faint, like a whisper. But because your wolf is dormant, I couldn't confirm the bond." "The bond?" Sienna's hand went to her chest. "I spent years trying to forget you," Gabriel continued, his voice rough. "I told myself it was just admiration, but then I heard the rumors, that Richard was mistreating you, that he was pushing you aside for your stepsister. And then, the invitation. You knew about the wedding? I have spies everywhere. When I heard Liam Harper was casting you aside, I lost my patience. I came to the bar because I knew that was where you went when you were hurting. I intended to just watch, to make sure you were okay." He laughed bitterly. "Then you walked up to me. You looked me in the eye, terrified but determined, and offered to pay me. You had so much fire, Sienna." In that moment, the whisper became a scream. "I knew." He reached out and took her hand, placing it over his heart. She could feel it beating heavy, steady, powerful. "I am not your fake husband, Sienna. I am your mate." The world seemed to stop spinning. The pieces fell into place. The way the ring fit perfectly. The way she felt safe with him instantly. The way he looked at her. "But I'm broken," Sienna whispered, the old insecurity rising up. "I don't have a wolf. I'm just human. A king needs a queen with power. I can't give you heirs. I can't run with you." "You are not broken." Gabriel's voice was fierce. "You are stronger than them. You survived a house that wanted to crush you, and you never bowed. That is power, Sienna." He leaned in closer. "And as for your wolf," he brought his face inches from hers. His eyes began to glow violet. The power radiating from him was intense, filling the room, filling her. "Wolves go dormant when they don't feel safe," Gabriel murmured. "Your wolf has been hiding because she knew she was in a nest of vipers. She was waiting for safety. She was waiting for me." Sienna felt a spark, deep in her gut, a heat she hadn't felt since she was a child. It started in her stomach and spread to her fingertips. Her vision sharpened. The smell of the fire became distinct: pine, ash, oak. She could hear Cale's heartbeat outside. "Gabriel?" she gasped. "I feel—" "Let her out," Gabriel coaxed. "It's safe here. I've got you." Sienna threw her head back and screamed, but it wasn't a scream of pain. It was a release. Bones shifted, muscles reorganized. It happened fast, fueled by the proximity of her mate. In a flash of golden light, the woman was gone. In her place stood a wolf. She wasn't huge like Gabriel. She was sleek, smaller, with fur the color of burnished copper and eyes of intelligent hazel. Gabriel smiled. He shifted too, his clothes shredding away as a massive black wolf with violet eyes took his place. He bowed his head to her, an acknowledgement of an equal. Sienna, her wolf, yipped playfully and pounced. They didn't run miles. They wrestled by the fire, a tangle of black and copper fur, nuzzling and biting playfully. It was the sealing of the bond, the acceptance. When they shifted back, hours later, wrapped in a fur blanket on the rug, the dynamic had changed. Sienna wasn't the scared girl anymore. She could feel the connection between them, a golden thread of emotion and thought. "You knew that would happen," Sienna accused softly, tracing the muscles of his chest. "I hoped," Gabriel admitted. He kissed the top of her head. So, my queen, we have a choice. We can stay here. I can send my armies to crush your father, and we can live in the north, away from the politics. Sienna sat up. She looked into the fire. She thought of Jessica's smirk. She thought of her father selling Gabriel to assassins. She thought of the years of torment. The copper wolf inside her snarled. No, Sienna said. Her voice was different now, deeper, resonant. We don't hide. She turned to Gabriel, her eyes flashing gold. We go back, and I take what is mine. The doors to the Silver Moon estate didn't open. They were kicked in. Sienna walked into her father's office first, her black coat billowing, with Gabriel looming behind her like a shadow of death. Alpha Richard sat behind his mahogany desk, surrounded by the nervous council members. Jessica and Liam huddled on the sofa, looking pale and exhausted. Sienna, Richard stammered, his eyes darting to Gabriel. We were just discussing the rogue attack. We're here to discuss treason, Gabriel announced, his voice vibrating through the floorboards. He tossed a blood-stained digital recorder onto the desk. The assassin's confession played loud and clear, detailing Richard's payment to the syndicate for the king's head. The council gasped. Alpha, Richard. The head elder stood up, furious. You sold us out. Desperate, Richard reached for the silver revolver hidden in his drawer, but he was too slow. Sienna moved with a blur of newfound speed, slamming her hand down on the desk and shattering the wood, pinning her father's wrist. Don't, she growled, her eyes flashing molten gold. The room froze. The human girl was gone. A powerful wolf stood in her place. The council stripped Richard of his rank immediately, sentencing him to exile as a rogue, a fate worse than death. Jessica sobbed as her status evaporated instantly. Liam looked at Sienna, his eyes filled with regret. Sienna, save it. She cut him off. The pack is yours, Sienna, the elder offered, bowing his head. You are the blood heir. Sienna looked around the room at the father who hated her, the sister who stole from her, and the ex who betrayed her. They looked small now, insignificant. No, Sienna said, taking Gabriel's hand. I don't want this small pond. I have a kingdom to rule. She turned her back on them, walking out of the house forever, not as a rejected daughter, but as the wolf queen of the north. Sienna thought she needed a fake date to survive her ex's wedding, but she ended up finding her destiny. From the rain-soaked streets of Seattle, to the blood-stained wedding altar, and finally to the throne of the Wolf King, her journey proves that sometimes rock bottom is the solid foundation you need to build an empire. She didn't just get revenge on the people who hurt her, she outgrew them. She found a love that wasn't afraid of her darkness and a power she never knew she possessed. If you loved Sienna's transformation from rejected outcast to the Wolf Queen, smash that like button. What would you have done in her shoes, forgiven the ex or destroyed the wedding? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next part of our werewolf romance saga. Thanks for watching.
Hi, my name is Mountain Confessions, the owner and manager of Mountain Confessions. After watching the video, I need a date to my ex's wedding. She pleaded. The Alpha King smirked. I'll go as your. I'd really like to know what you think. How did this story make you feel? What stayed with me most was the mix of pride, heartbreak, and quiet confidence between the characters. Sometimes the strongest moments aren't the dramatic ones, but the small reactions that show someone finally realizing their worth. I also think the story touches on something a lot of people can relate to: how complicated it feels to face the past while trying to protect your own peace. Do you think going to the wedding was the right decision, or would you have walked away completely? And if you were in her position, would you trust someone like the Alpha King so quickly, or keep your guard up a little longer? Stories like this remind me that confidence doesn't always have to be loud. Sometimes it's just knowing when to stop chasing people who already made their choice. If this story meant something to you or gave you a feeling you can't quite explain yet, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy these emotional Alpha King stories, feel free to like or subscribe so we can keep sharing more together.